If you're steering $1 billion plus enterprise and you know the old ways of networking are dead, CEO Zones has moved past the era of analog peer groups, and we're at your level, killing those traditional models and bringing the conversation of intelligence and access to other CEOs of your size or larger around the world. Welcome to CEO Zone's Meet the Speaker series. We replace slow with AI foresight and whole life frameworks. To do that, we bring experts who understand your size and your needs. Today, we welcome Mike Fitzpatrick. Mike is the president and CEO of NCX Group, a distinguished fellow of the Poemon, and I might have said that wrong. You can
Hahnemann.
correct me. Sorry?
Hahnemann.
Poneman. I don't know why I got Pokemon in my mind, but that's probably because I have great grandkids. Anyway, and he is a CRISC certified authority. He is here to show us and tell us how to translate cyber resistance into board level strategy and beyond. Thank you, Mike, for being with us. It is my pleasure to have you. Just last night, I got to read two of your newest articles in our CEO Zones community, and you're doing great things. So, welcome to Meet the Speaker.
Well, Bill, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you and the audience, and I really enjoy the opportunity.
Well, that's excellent. As you know, we target CEOs of $1 billion and greater in revenue or professional directors that are on those boards of $1 billion and greater. And that's our membership base. That's our audience. We don't get a tremendous amount of views, but we certainly do get lots of follow-up questions from the right people who make decisions of running their organizations. So my first question is kind of around AI versus AI and what all the things are going on out there. But at CEO Zones, we've literally embraced AI and have created a human community that interacts in the speed of light, 24/7 voice activated chat tools, things like that in the community, so you can get what you want when you want it. But in your world where AI is accelerating the speed of attacks, how does a CEO move their organization from reaction to being ahead of it?
And it's a great question. It's almost foundational, I think, at this point with the speed in which business is functioning these days. Organizations are not walking towards AI, they're running towards AI. And in some cases, it will work out. In other cases, I think it could be problematic. One of the things that we always talk about is the need for governance, risk, and compliance in the cyber risk world of things. So unless your GRC program is up to speed, I would be a little cautious with AI. You don't want intellectual property leaving the building, getting put into a training model that shouldn't be. So you want to be able to put up the guardrails, set a foundation for what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. It's interesting. There's a Ponemon Institute research project that was just released through the company that sponsored it was OPSWAT, and they do probably 98% of the nuclear facilities in the world utilize their technology for cybersecurity. So in that OPSWAT report on AI, what was one of the more interesting statistics to me is that out of the thousands of businesses, that 1,000 businesses surveyed in the US, only 26% actually had a policy around AI, how it's going to be used, how it's going to function. My question that I asked is, okay, did AI create the policy, or is it one with a little depth? Is it one with a, or is it just a thin veil that we're dealing with? Then you had another 27% that are using AI, but they're going to get to a policy next year. And then you have the rest that have no intention of allowing anybody on AI. So it was an interesting mix, and it tells an interesting story when it comes to the utilization of it. So, we're still early days, so I think it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out for sure.
Excellent. So because you interact with so much, I think you have Fortune 50 clients and
Yes.
then other sizes of clients. But many of the boards that I've been on, or many of the professional directors I talk to, they kind of look at cybersecurity as that checklist, or the family office that says, "Hey, before we buy this company, go down the list and make sure we're not going to have our credit card, our consumers don't get their credit card stolen." Or the private equity firm that comes in and goes, "Oh man, we don't care about cybersecurity. We just want to buy it and keep moving that EBITDA line," right?
Right.
So what's up with the metrics, and what's the right way to do things now that we're headed into 2026?
Another timely question, and it's one that I've been having a lot of discussions this year with family offices, with private equity, and with the seller side of it. Quite frankly, the seller side, the amount of sellers that are going to be in the market, especially mid tier and lower mid tier, that audience, 80% of them have never actually conducted a cybersecurity assessment, is what the data shows. So it's going to be really problematic for them, which means that the PE world, the family office world, has a real chance to buy some salvage title vehicles. In other words, right? They don't know what the risk is because the PE world, the buyer world, is utilizing a checklist. They're not validating what the seller says. They're just going off of a checklist. I think we're fast approaching it, and my position is you have to validate. And we have a saying. There's two core philosophies that we have at NCX. One, in cybersecurity, you have to be brilliant at the ordinary. It is about the grind. It is about the day-to-day blocking and tackling. You cannot let up. You have to be diligent in the effort, and it takes real time to make sure that things go well. The other piece of our philosophy is cybersecurity isn't about what you think, and it's not about what you feel. It's about what you can prove. And proof is going to be the key in validation, I believe, in the next 2 or 3 years. I actually believe that with where we're going and the amount of attacks and how they've increased over the last 2 years, I believe that cyber risk will be on par, if not more important, in some acquisitions than EBITDA.
So you just made me think of, so you buy it, you put goodwill on the balance sheet. How do you how do you quantify the balance sheet side of that acquisition around the risk or the cost of prevention? Or I get it that it's a P&L expense, but at the same time, there's got to be some offsetting goodwill, or a degradation to goodwill when you're the seller, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really comes. I don't see a way to insure your way out of it, right?
Oh,
So from a risk standpoint, and this is an example that I heard recently, and the investment community is starting to ask questions, but they're really basic level questions when it comes to cyber risk, cybersecurity, and they're starting to get their minds around it. But there's still a long way to go to understand that cybersecurity and cyber risk is the most complex aspect of business today. Literally, we touch everything within the organization. If we go back to Lord of the Rings, it's the one ring that rules them all at the end of the day, because you can't do anything without security in a technology world. So the points of access are multiple, the exposures are multiple. In doing thousands of assessments through the last 24 years, I've never seen a clean assessment. I've never seen an A.
mm,
I've never, typically it's a high C or a low B. So the risk is always there. It's constant. And if we don't take the steps to validate what that risk and then translate that into what the financial impact is, because cybersecurity is not a tool, or cyber risk, I should say, is not about tools. It's not about IT impact. It's not about how it aligns with IT. it's a business and financial risk. As a matter of fact, it is now the number one business and financial risk.
Hmm. You're making me pause because I just heard some of my audience that are friends go, "Oh no!" Uh, but it's late 25, and we're excited to get into 2026. So we'll
Hmm.
we'll we'll, we'll continue to learn, go forward. Uh, Another concept that I have in my little head is we have digital governance board of directors,
Hmm.
traditional governors board of directors. How should the CEO be looking at or talking to key suppliers like a Cisco? What can you help them do around equipment, the software, the technology? What's some of the take the jargon out of it and speak CEOs for a second, the language of a CEO? How do you help that CEO learn some of the
I,
key
I,
attributes?
I think one of the most important elements right now that is really not being given the budget or attention that it needs, and that is vendor risk management. Talking about speaking to Cisco and your other vendors. I've got a presentation that I'm doing for a new Poneman research project, and I got the preliminary views of it yesterday. And one of the statistics that just jumped off the page at me is that the average vendor risk component within businesses today creates 12 breaches a year. So your third party vendors are creating on average 12 breaches a year, which is unbelievable. If we're talking about smaller organizations, and I know that's not the focus of this, but in a recent presentation that I did and some recent research, when you look at the MSP world, the outsourced IT world, there are 40,000 MSPs out there. Last year, 70% of them were breached. So 27,000 were breached. Each one carries an average of 122 clients. There's a success rate for the hacker of transitioning from that breach of the MSP to their clients and breaching them. So you may still get everything right, but because the MSP has access to everything you're doing, you're going to get exposed. And so that third party breach or that third party risk management is now responsible for about 60% of all breaches today. So being able to really focus on that, apply some fuel to the fire from a finance standpoint, it's really, really critical for organizations as they go forward in 26. A friend of mine is a CISO at a mortgage company. He is spending north of $1 million a year on vendor risk management alone. And that's with a staff of 15 plus the right tools.
Wow. So I kind of this might not have been a question, but it is now.
That's fine.
Uh, so the CEOs had a breach.
Yes.
They got a life. They have a family. They got a crisis going on.
Mm-hmm.
How would you, from a cybersecurity information risk platform, how do you help that leader go through that storm? Because that's we have crisis management experts like
Absolutely.
Jeff Chatterton. So I'm not asking that, but can you do from the technology side to help them when they're really under pressure? Shareholders yelling at them, the local news channels yelling at them, and 40,000 credit cards have been whatevered, right? So
Well, and I mean, it's an interesting question. And we've never treated cybersecurity as a checkbox. For us, it's always been a business risk. And how I've always tried to communicate this risk, especially to CEOs, is that prevention and doing the right things from a preventative standpoint is going to be your saving grace, because once the breach happens, you're looking, I mean, I wrote an article about this. Take a look at the NotPetya ransomware global event in 2017 that affected NHS in the UK. It affected FedEx. FedEx put out a guidance warning. They were off by 300 million that year from a revenue standpoint. Look at Experian and what happened with it. So you start to get into this delayed growth cycle as a result of a breach. So prevention is your key. It is about putting the right muscle in the right place and doing the right things. In our 24 years of doing this, we've never had a client experience a breach. And I'm not saying we're better than everybody else, but we do look harder. We do recommend and push for them to do the right things from a prevention first standpoint. Be proactive rather than reactive. Hopefully
Okay.
that answers the question.
Yeah, yeah, no, that was good. So you made me think upside down again.
That's fine.
Do you literally hire people to try to hack into your own prevention, or what's part of the method there? Which part of the magic?
Well, I've got a great staff, and that is part of what we do. We actually during our assessments we look at what we call Secure 24 is our 24-point evaluation of the organization. So it's everything from policy procedure to emerging technology. It's internal, external penetration testing. It's now we actually include AI assessments as part of that. But we also include physical because if I can exploit you from a physical standpoint, you have no chance. I've got you. And to give you an idea, there's a bank that hired us to go in and do their assessment. One of the things they wanted on the physical assessment was to see if we could compromise the tellers.
Mhm.
And so we had 10 branches that we worked with. When I heard that from my guys, I said, listen, I've got this vision of one of my team members prone on the ground with a gun to his head because somebody hit the button. So I said, let me do it. And so I went out and did it, and I was able to compromise 8 out of the 10 just by talking my way.
Oh my goodness.
So again, when you look at the role of the attacker is incredibly creative. They're going to know as much about you as possible before they ever land or step foot into the electronic space or the physical space.
Holy smokes. No, I never thought of that. The physical side. Wow. So even the cash register at your local retailer could give up something, huh?
Well, it's fun. It's funny you mentioned that. We had a client that is a large grocery store chain. They focus on small third tier, fourth tier cities. One of the things that we discovered is that their club loyalty system, club card system, had no security in it whatsoever. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was their actual corporate offices, which was in a small town. The data center was in a early 1900s garage with refrigerator doors lining the inside to keep it cool. And then the other fun part was the early 1900s fuses. You know the round fuses.
I used to have them in my 125-year-old house. Yeah.
That's what ran the whole place. But they also left their windows open at night in the corporate offices because it's a town of 3,000 and they trust everybody.
Wow.
So you have to go look at those things. You have to look at all of your risk. And I think back to the CEOs, one of the things that I recommend to every CEO is elevate your chief security officer out of IT and make it a direct board level report. You need a traffic cop, somebody that's got nobody standing in their way to actually report to you what the risk is. It's your job to decide whether it's an acceptable risk, a risk you're going to mitigate, or one you're going to ignore. but there needs to be a clear line of communication to the board and to the CEO from that person in order for CEOs to get the clear picture. Because if you don't, the others that might be between that person and you
Mhm.
will put their own political spin on it. You need to take it out of being a political football and make it something that's useful information to you to make decisions.
Yep. You remind me of I spent about 25 years trying to get supply chain a seat at the table, as I called it, because COVID brought it to bear, but it was
Mm-hmm.
out there for decades before that, right? So why
Yeah.
not have supply chain? Well, no, the operations guys got that covered. Well, no, that's too big of a ball. So I appreciate what you're saying there. Uh, so you've mentioned several times that the checklist is dead, the annual audit is dead. So what's the real time actual look like for an enterprise that's multi-billion dollars? How can you help the CEO get their head around, okay, I got this seat at the table. How do I speak to this new person?
One of the things that we launched, gosh, I guess it's been about 3 years ago now. When we deliver our assessments, we actually deliver it on our platform. So the goal is not to have the assessment be a point in time, because what happens with a point in time assessment, you know this from being a consultant, it sort of sets on the shelf. It's looked at real quick and it sets on the shelf. What we're doing is we're staying with the client. We deliver all the results and all the remediation requirements in the assessment, what the report is. And with that, we can provide access to the CEO, to the CFO, to the IT team. So we're able to manage the risk up and down and throughout the organization with key shareholders or stakeholders having access to the platform, because it's not an IT issue. This is not an IT issue. This is not a security issue. This is a business issue, and it should be treated as such. And so, with that type of approach, you have an evergreen assessment that is just constantly updated. It's real time. You know where you are on that specific day from a scoring perspective. More importantly, from an executive standpoint, you can see what your teams are working on as a result of where they are in the remediation process. And we found that to be really beneficial and helpful in determining risk and mitigating risk and adding intelligent risk to the decision making of the executive team.
Mhm. Thank you. We're getting close to that magic moment where we know, as engaging as you have been, CEOs will go, nope, I don't have 30 minutes to watch that right now, and they'll put it off. So we don't want to do that to you. As we bring this episode to a close, Mike is available for keynote speaking, CEO coaching, which he just brought up, teaching you how to speak the right jargon as a CEO to make sure that new person on your direct reports is giving you the right information, because it's all about the right questions. And he's also, his organization is NCX Group, and they'd love to talk to you about enterprise information risk, cyber risk, those types of things. Mike has his own podcast called Bite Size Security. And at the thumbnail at the back of this video, we'll make sure that we get the right address for Bite Size Security. And in our community, we'll start to populate that now that I realized there was one today through my research of Bite Size Security. Your office number is 888 448 5451, and your website is ncxgroup.com. And if you're listening or watching and or doing both, or maybe you're listening and driving, you could always go to ceozones.com to the content partner page, and Mike Fitzpatrick is under the F's. We love to have the best we can offer as curated content for our CEO members. So thank you, Mike. We really appreciated it. And I did learn some new things that I need to follow up on. Uh, and I wrote those down over here. So thank you so much for your time and your knowledge.
Bill, thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure. Really enjoyed it, and happy to help whoever we can be a benefit to.
Okay, we'll make sure that 888 number gets tagged on the end here. Maybe someone's going to call in and want to hire you as a keynote, or better yet, maybe a client.